Hey everybody, long time no see, right? Well, there's just been so many things happening. I mean, I always use that as an excuse, but it's absolutely true. Um, so much has taken place. I started to look at my old videos to see where I left off, but it's so never ending, right? And there's always so much information about this. That's why when I do like these videos and stuff, I don't have to prepare or anything. I just show up, because it's the way I try to describe it. It's like a bunch of guys, get together and they go on a fishing trip for the weekend. They camp out and they come home, right? And you have all these memories, and they're like right in the front of your brain, right, the whole time. And so it's really easy to tell the story of whatever took place and who did what and who caught what, that sort of thing. And so it's really similar to what takes place for me on a daily basis, because it's part of my life. And not that I go up every day. There's been some changes in that too, but just the idea, right? So anyways, I'm back here, and I'm out in book 15 right now. 14 is just about ready to be released. I think I got 3/4 of it done. I mean, the writing takes about a day to do an entire book. I compile the notes, of course, along the way and everything like that, and because I record a lot of it. But at the same time, there's the fill-ins, what I was thinking and things like that. That doesn't go on in the record, right? So anyway, thought I'd start out here, just kind of a review. When you read the books, you need to go from the very beginning and read them in order, because what happens in the process, for me anyway, and I've been able to look back and I get reminded all the time that there's things that change the way I see things, the way I experience things and understand them, because the more I get to know, I start to realize I wasn't complete in this or that, right? Kind of like love, right? Everybody seems to have some sort of definition for love, but imagine trying to understand love with other beings, like animals and things like that, and how that's different, because it's just all part of one big definition that never ends, right? The definition continues forever. So that's one of the big things, and it's really, so many of these things that take place, that I experience, they're beyond our words, and so I have to figure a way to explain it so that I can even understand the things that are taking place. I call it homerization. And a funny thing about that, I learned that a long time ago. I was hanging out with this guy that's like super intelligent, kind of like the Einstein kind of intelligence, and there was a group of people together, and he would be talking to us, and everybody gets lost, and they give up trying to figure out what he's saying. And so the way I would listen would be what I do understand, what he's saying, and it gives me a picture. It may not, it's like somebody reminded me the other day, one of the things I tell people when I ask them a question, right, and they go into all these details, and it's like, look, I don't need to know how to build the clock. I just want to know what time it is, sort of thing. And so that way it allows me to keep up in a lot of ways. So I wanted to go back and review a few things, in case people haven't been keeping up, like with the books and all. But one of the things that they told me from the very beginning, which has been over validated to myself over the period of time, was like they said, we're so much more, right, than we believe or that we think. And a lot of that has to do with the brain, right? Our brain is very limited. It's an organ, and it's in survival mode, and it protects us, in so many different ways, but it limits us because, like, for instance, if we have this memory and it's just a really quick memory, right? And it totally freaks us out, whatever it was, because we didn't understand what we were seeing. Well, the brain, what it'll do to protect us is fill in the gaps to complete the memory, because it's such a deep emotional experience that we have in this vision or experience that we have, but we only captured a little bit of it because of the fear. And I understand it now. It took a while, but over a period of time. But so the brain uses references, and it does, like, it doesn't have the complete picture, so it just catches whatever it needs to complete that memory to keep us from going insane. And a lot of times that doesn't help so much. It makes it worse, but that's its function. It's the mind is what is our key. That's who we truly are. That's where our consciousness lies. And so when it comes from the brain, it's like, okay, I'm in the pyramids, right? And I'm checking all this stuff out. I'm seeing all these beautiful things and things mysteries that I'm trying to figure out. Well, if you sit there and try to figure it out, like I say, the brain is going to latch on to references that it has, but may not be correct. And so it leads us down this path of never really understanding, or think we do, but then there's questions and, that sort of thing. Where if you are in the mind, what you're doing is you're actually experiencing what it is, in fully experiencing it, and you're not trying to think or put things together. And so you're absorbing a whole lot more of the reality of wherever you are and whatever it is that you're seeing, and not to have those expectations of more than that, right? And that's when you get more. And by, like, it could be a week, it could be a year, it could be 2 years, but something's going to happen along the way that out of the blue, it'll just, oh my God, when I was in there, that's what that meant, sort of thing. And that will be coming from the mind. And when it comes from the mind, it's pure, it's real, and the references are actual. So that's kind of the difference between the mind and the brain going into the consciousness, which is really important for a lot of the stuff that I've understood now. But so anyways, I wanted to get into that, and let's see what else was one of the things that people were talking about. Well, let me really skip to, like, natural law. Oh wait, hey, there was this thing that like, there's a lot of bug people right out in the universe, and the people that I deal with, I've met thousands or seen thousands of species and met hundreds of them, right? They're all very similar to us, and when I talk about humanoid, it's like, one head and 2 arms, 2 legs sort of thing. And there's other type beings too, and they kind of remind me of like insects or something like that. Well, the universe has worked like within a realm, what they call the realm, where the highly advanced beings are. And the people that are a part of that, they go by natural law. And natural law is kind of the path of least resistance, right? You follow this certain pattern. Now, the humanoid type people and the bug people are quite different. And they, because, when you talk about the bug people, it reminds me of like insects having a hive mind, working together, that sort of thing, to a single source, and so on and so forth, and for specific purposes. So communication is very difficult between humanoid type creatures and the bug type people, what I call bug type people looking up. And one day it was funny, I understood this. I understood there's no fear in them, and that they just don't communicate well. And they also explained to me, like, for instance, they go to harvest a planet, like, for things that they need, and natural law restricts them to only taking what would not affect the planet naturally. And so they can take all they want as long as it doesn't affect where that planet's going and what it is, right? And so they'll take everything that they can, but they don't need it all. And so what they'll do is they'll share it with the humanoid type people or other big bug type people. And so, and it goes both ways. And so it's like everybody works together in that sense. But I had this opportunity. They asked me, Hans, he's like, so you want to meet one of these bug people? And it was like, I was real excited at first. Yeah. And then I'm thinking, I'm not sure. And then, so the time came, and its ship was connected to ours, and I climbed through this tunnel, and get in this place. And in front of me was like, if you've ever seen like a spider under a microscope, but I'm 3 feet from this dude, right? And I don't know what it was, but I was in this fear, and I was like, I know there's no fear here. I mean, no issue, nothing scary is gonna happen, and yet still just the seeing it, right? It just, I couldn't believe, I was so embarrassed that, I went that direction in my head, and I didn't spend a whole lot of time there, and it was like, yeah, I appreciate you, dude, and everything, but I'm out of here. So anyways, that was my experience, and kind of maybe that helps people understand a little bit more about, seeing these type beings. There's nothing to fear. So I also wanted to go over like the things that I learned about what we are and who we are. And a lot of people haven't got the grasped the concept or skipped over, but it's extremely important to understand who we are and how all these things fit together, because there's so much material here. That's why I've written like 15 books, right, since 22. It's insanity what I've learned, not just from what somebody tells me, but face to face, right, and experience them by actually living with them. And when I say living, it's not like I'm there all the time. There's been some recent events that's even, I've stepped back a little bit more, which I'll try to explain if we got time in here. How much time has went by? Holy crap. Anyway, basically who we are and what we are is consciousness, right? And the way here's my homerization, in order for me to even understand it, and if I hadn't put it in this way, I wouldn't be able to remember everything, but this way I can understand what I need to know. And that is, like, there's like a great big puzzle board in space, right? And each of those pieces is consciousness. And then there's this dude, and he's got this like long gray hair and sits on a big lazy boy, and he's got all these televisions in front of him that he's watching, kind of like the Matrix thing, right? And we have all these lives that are going on, and there's no such thing as time. There's like moment, I guess is what you would call it, that would encompass so much, because our minds are created in such a way, our brains are such a way that we can only conceive so much without being conscious or being in the mind. And that changes a lot of things too. But to understand this helps you merge and understand the difference between the two. Anyways, these little TVs are our lives that are taking place. And the big guy on the lazy boy, he's consciousness. And like a lot of people call it like an oversoul or something like that, which is basically a piece of us as a whole. But we have all these lives that are going on at the same time. Past lives, future lives, current lives. They are all taking place at the same time on a plane of existence. And what we do is we never come here where we perceive that we are. We're just a projection. And like the way I made it simple is each of those lives is like a TV series, right? So, this TV series is me in this life, in this place, doing this, right? And this one is a different one, that sort of thing. And how that works is that we all have a unique essence. And that essence, we take a little bit of it and smear it on a piece of consciousness. Then we create what that life or that TV show is going to be in the stream of consciousness with those people that we're going to interact with, that we want to interact with. And so we're with them, and we're creating this stuff in the stream of consciousness, in the quantum, right, in the fluids, and we're putting it all together, what this life is going to be like, who we're going to be with, who we're going to meet, and that sort of thing. But then we project here. We never leave consciousness, but we project here. And so, and the purpose of that is for whatever we created in the stream of consciousness to create in this life, we still have free will. So we come down here and we don't have the memory of that, right? That's the beauty of it. So that we can fully experience these things we set up in the stream of consciousness prior to being projected here. And then once we're here, we have free will. And so it may not go quite as we set it up, right? Depending upon the people that we created it with, when we meet them, we're predestined to meet these certain people along the way, but they also have free will. So their level of consciousness or what it is that we seek from them, they may not have fulfilled it, or they may have went beyond it, right? Just like us. So when we cross, depending upon the advancement of that piece of consciousness and this piece of consciousness that you possess, is going to matter how important that crossing with that other being is, and so on and so forth. So that's how this happens. And then when that TV show ends, right, that's when we have this, what we perceive as a physical death. And to go beyond that, it gets even crazier and weirder. And a lot of it is beyond my comprehension and even homerization. But for instance, we're on a plane of existence. Everything that is in this world, right, is the path of existence or life, however you want to call it. And then along that plane of existence are dimensions, and it confuses a lot of people what a dimension actually is. A dimension is an aspect of oneself. So one of my projections will be in a dimension, and it comes down, right, to the playing grounds that we set up in the stream of consciousness. And along that same line, which is happening simultaneously, another life form of ourselves in another dimension on that same plane of existence, where me and Sam Jess came together, since we're actually the same person. She was on a plane of existence in my plane of existence, and they merged. I don't understand a whole lot of that. They started to explain it to me, and I just like blah, 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 blah. It was too much, right? But so when our planes of existence merged, we were in the same dimension. And so that's how that all came to be. And in the books, you'll see so many other things that are so exact. Our birth date, time, and the whole lot, all that stuff. You can't really apply the, what do you call all the stars, what's that called? I can't even think of it. Astrology, because it doesn't quite work, because we have different constellations in our field, but you could probably apply theirs to ours and merge, but I don't know. Anyway, but later I found out, which I won't go a whole lot deep into this, but I was asking Sam Jess, more about planes of existence and the dimensions and stuff. And it's important. This information will be important in other things that I'll talk about. But there are so many. We exist not only in this realm, right? The one earthly, but we have multiple planes of existence. Countless, right? That we are living lives on, and we're doing the projection thing and everything. But it may be a light being, it may be a ethereal being, it could be so many different things, fairy, whatever. All those are existing simultaneously as we're doing this, because how it ends, like this one life that we are presently aware of, when we have that physical death that we believe in, that means that projection ends, and that essence from that consciousness goes into what I call a museum, right? And that's why we never die. That energy never dies. The things we learn is fed back as that consciousness returns to the whole. It feeds everything else with that knowledge and those experiences that took place while we were as a projection. And then that life form continues to exist in, like what I say is called the museum, where it's a being that we can actually speak to and stuff, like relatives and things like that. That's how that works. So that was that part. It's abbreviated, but it is that part. Geez, where to go? Okay. Let's see. And let's see, becoming more. That's becoming, okay, to become more. That was one of the simplest things. One of the most difficult things, but the basics for everything. the things that we perceive as magic, for instance, like floating, levitating, doing all these things, walking through walls and things like that, those are all part of our capability. But as we get stuck in the brain, we can't perceive what that would be. And if we can't perceive it, we can't believe it. So then we can't do it, right? So in order to activate that, there's only one way, and that's the energy that comes from love. So in your up here in the brain sort of thing, you got all these memories, right? And that's what creates our energy, the types of memories that we have. Not necessarily what those memories were, but how we perceive those to be and how we can actually change those. But the key is to start finding memories of unconditional love. And so if you go through life and you create something, in a sense, whether it be a physical thing like art or something, or helping somebody or helping people without expectations, right? You can experience everything, but without the expectation, and just do it because that's what you want, that's what you truly believe in, and that's you're not actually looking to receive anything back from that sort of thing. So it's unconditional. And when we do these things and we are creating these memories of unconditional love, and one of the things that people always ask me, well, I can't think of any, which that's crap unless you've really had a bad life. But essentially, you just think of your animals. A lot of times a person has an animal or so many different things that is alive that we have an unconditional love response to, and that becomes a memory. So if we start filling up all these gaps in its unlimited space in order to fill these memories up into our head of unconditional love, we start to become more, because our energy changes, right? And it gives us more power. Now the energy itself isn't anything other than energy power, right? It's energy is energy, but it's the things that it gives us the capability of doing, kind of like plugging a radio into a socket, electrical socket, right? Before there was nothing, suddenly it has everything. That's energy. So anyway, that's how we become more. That's how we break the bonds of the physicality and enter into the world of consciousness. There's so much that comes from this too. As I say, right? There's no way I could write enough books, right, to fill in all the things that I find interesting. But where do I want to go with this? Come on, guys, tell me. Do it psychically here. I don't believe in telepathy, but send it to me. Oh, sensing. That leads into a huge thing too. I'm reminding you all this stuff. You already know that. And that was one of the things that happened to me when everything started to become overwhelming before I made this decision to take a little break here and there, right? Was that I told Sam Jess, my God, it's just becoming so overwhelming. All this information, it's like I don't know where to put it all and everything. And she laughs at me and she kind of pushes me on the chest. She goes, like, stupid. You're not learning anything, she said. I said, well, thanks a lot. No, she goes, you're not learning anything more. You already know it. You're just remembering. So there's plenty of room up there, no matter how big your head is or how small your head is. There's plenty of space up there because you're not learning anything. You're just remembering. And, man, that took me a whole while to figure what that really meant, right? But it's true, and it makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Now there's how does the ship move? That was another question that a lot of people, they don't have to have warp drive, or they don't have to have anything like that, or a special way of doing it. Basically what it is, and see, here I go with harmonization because there's no other way to explain it. They have a computer, right? It's not a computer, right? Anyway, for the sake of this, they know where they want to go in space, light years away or whatever. And what they do is they find a space, the place in space they want to go, and their computer identifies because everything has frequency. Everything occupying a certain space has a frequency. And so what they simply do is they become that frequency. And like for instance, little details like what I found interesting was like they can the ship or the intelligence of the ship can understand like 3 seconds in the future in a sense. So they're not going to transport somewhere, which is instantaneous, but they're not going to transport into something, right? Something that changes in that space that they want to occupy. And even if it did, the ship has this intelligence. I call it PI, personal intelligence, right? Like when I fly the pods. But anyway, so it's completely safe, and it will move from one place in space to another by just becoming that frequency, changing the frequency of where we are to the place that we want to be. And that's how they're able to move so fast from one place to another. That covers that one. Power for certain things. It was interesting how there's so many other stuff. That's the funny thing. Every time I think of something, it's like 40 other things come up, right? That you might want to hear. But anyways, power. Sorry. One of these things that I came to learn was that, like, for instance, Hans wanted to show me something, and it was kind of comical how he went about showing me, right? I mean, it's like he gets so excited and forgets to tell me a lot of times what's going on. But if you've ever seen like those vacuum tubes that banks use, to when you're in a drive-through and it sucks it up, right? Well, something similar to that, he takes and he throws it outside the ship, and it took about 20 minutes because of where we were to collect enough light in order to bring it back in. Then they compress it, pressurize it, vacuum, put it in a vacuum, and it shrinks down, and it's like the size of, like, for instance, it's collecting light while it's out there. There's always light, right? Even in the darkest place in space, there's light. Anyway, it collects it, and when it's collected, they put it in this vacuum, and he'll have a box about the size of, like those electric drills, battery powered, the batteries that you connect to it. It's about the size of that. And he was telling me that, like, when, like for instance, a big, like one of those huge pet stores or grocery stores, massive ones, right? This little thing will power it for over 9 years. And thunderstorms and things like that will not shut the power off. Also, like, when he created this in front of me, he goes, "Look at your phone," and I pulled my phone out of my pocket and it was charging, that sort of thing. So but it doesn't affect our bodies either, because it's a very clean, when they create it in that fashion, it's just light, right? That's occurring. You're not looking at a bright light or nothing, but that's what it's embodied, is this light. And so those power little units for different things, they don't use a lot of power in that way for many things, but there's other systems that they use. But just for an instance that he wanted to show me how they can have power. And that reminds me of quite like the PI stuff, where like when my ship, right, when I get in a pod and I'm flying it, I'm an astronaut, by the way. I don't know if you knew that, but anyway, this personal intelligence, they create a life that will surround this pod, and it's just directly connected to me. It knows everything about me. It has this limited ability to do just one specific thing, basically, and that's to not allow me to mess up. So in other words, if I'm flying and I'm following another ship or something like Hans in front of me or something, and I don't hit the brakes in time, I go through him, right, crash into him. Well, the PI prevents that. It knows what I would think and what I would do if I wasn't to be making that mistake, and it can identify those mistakes. Also, it can keep me out of harm's way, doing something that, or going somewhere that I can't be, right, there shouldn't be. So that's what the PI is like, and they create these life forms in for multiple purposes. One of the things that I saw was coffee. Like, we were in space, and the collection of water, they took me to, like, it was almost like in space, it isn't like all these pretty pictures that you see, of all these great big things with the beautiful colors and everything. Those are filters that they use to identify different types of things. But anyway, long story short, it's more like clouds, right? And it's still beautiful, but in a different way. but when like there's water vapor, you'll see like a big cloud, right? It's misty, but you can see through it, that sort of thing, like vapor. And there's oceans and oceans of water in space. And so they'll use these little intelligent things, creations like plasma, right? And it'll go out and it'll collect, and it has one job. And basically, in other words, lack for words, they program it, this life form, for that specific thing, is to collect that water, and then it'll bring it back into the ship. Or if it needs to, if the ship has enough or has collected enough, it'll also collect some for somewhere near that needs it, and it'll be sent to them in that manner. And so also they can detect, like in areas that you don't see the water vapor, there's still water, there's so much water in space, and they're able to detect it with I don't know how to explain it, like mathematics or whatever, where they can measure the thickness or whatever of different areas, and that with that they can determine, oh, that's water, sort of thing. And then they can still collect that. It's just not as plentiful. I guess it'd be like a pond, right? Rather than an ocean. And so they can still find water throughout space, and they do the same method in order to retrieve it if they need it. Especially since Sam just built me a shower, now they use water a lot more, but it never goes to waste, right? So let's see, I think that completes that part. One of the other things that people ask about, like every time I enter into the ship, I'm scanned, and what it does, it scans my body, and it takes all the, we have thousands of bugs, or however many bugs that live on our bodies, right? And when I go into the ship, in order to prevent like the contamination, those are removed from me as I walk in. And then once I'm in, our body still needs those bugs, so they're replicas, right? Ones that aren't going to cause a problem, right? And so that's what covers your body. And then again, when you leave, they stay behind or die or off, I don't know what, but then the other bugs come back to us. So anyways, that's how that works. Plus they can identify certain things in you, and I think I wrote about that in the very beginning when they started to see the scars and stuff on my body and questioned it, and it was challenging, or I challenged myself on that one. Let's see, here's a really fun one. Oh, okay, we've been at half hours. Am I boring you yet? Multiplicity. Now, this is going rather deep. If you haven't read my books, you'll understand. So, it's kind of interesting how it came to be to me, and this was part of where Sam just did the thing about, you're not learning anything, you're just remembering. Well, they have these rest periods, and it's like 20 minutes, 2 or 3 times what would be a day for us, where basically it's like they sit down and meditate, but there's a lot more going on than that when they're doing this. They'll be communicating with people, like, for instance, people read my books, and they go into a deep meditation or deep state or sensing, and they are trying to speak to one of my friends or somebody else, right? You never know who you're going to get on that line when it's a party phone, right? When you go in that space. Anyway, like I was sitting with Lauren, I was asking her, so what happens in that time that you do this, the rest, where it's basically the body, the physical side is what's resting, and the cells, everything, your bones, the whole bit, real meditation, right? And there's a way to achieve that, but when she goes into that, because that, there could be a lot of people or a lot of beings that are trying to contact her for whatever reason, right? And just like we text people or email people or call them on the phone, communication. And she's usually aware, like 5 or 6 that are very present to her, that she's having a conversation with, and she's having these conversations with each one of them, right, individually, and she can understand, and she's fully aware of having those communications. It's like having your body split in several, 5 of you, and all of you having a separate conversation, but completely being aware of each and every one of those, and reacting to them each and every as that individual would if it was just one of us, right, one on one. But that's not the limit. There could be hundreds that she's speaking to at the same time, but she's not, like she said, she's not completely aware of her conversations with that many people, just the ones right in front of her. Yet she is fully conscious in having those conversations with these other people outside of the net, right in front of them. Yet when she like runs into one of them, say 3 years later or a year later or whatever, in another place, she'll remember that conversation that they had. So it sort of leads into the multiplicity, which is a really fun thing. For me, it was like one time they invited me to do the rest period with them. I think we were in Sam Jess's house or something, and we're laying there, or we move in there, and we get all relaxed and everything. And I'm not the greatest meditator. I mean, I've been a part of that. I have a different method in a sense, which has it comes out the same. But I'm in that meditation, and it's very hard after being Shaolin and being in the temples and such. It's very difficult to sit still and meditate, because we're not meant to sit still and meditate. Meditation is always supposed to be in motion. The body needs to be active in order to project those parts of your essence that you wish to travel. Anyway, so it's kind of difficult for me, right? And so anyway, so I'm sitting there with them all, and I'm going into this state, and I was dog tired anyway, and I started to have like a vision, and I was seeing these different things that were taking place. There was this place in Arizona that was just, it was like out of this world that I went to. Had all this Precambrian like blue rock, and it looked like Dr. Seuss or something, but it was just natural scenery in Arizona. And it was this faraway place, and there was a little creek that ran through it and everything. And I always liked that place, and I was feeling that I was there. It just felt like so real that I was actually there. And then I'm kind of laying on this rock, and it's warm, and it felt so nice and comfortable. I just got so deeply relaxed with that. And I look up in the sky, and there's this hawk, and it's flying. And instantly when I recognized the hawk, I was like seeing out of his eyes. I could see like the sides of my wings and everything, as though I was him, and flying and looking. And I was just like so amazed. And so long story short, I'm back in my body, and then all of a sudden it was over. And man, I just felt so energized and so awake, and it was like Sam Jess was waking me up, and it was like I was sleeping. And I go, wow, how long was I out? So I felt like I was like gone completely for like 8 hours or something, and she goes, it's 20 minutes. So I got to experience that, and that was leads into what I would understand later and experience later. And so like it came a time when I started to connect with this, and so I go on the ship, and I walk into the hallway like I've done 1,000 times, and it doesn't activate. It's like, damn it. It's like, what's going on? Did I get boycotted or thrown out? What I do? And I try again and again, and it doesn't work at all for me. So I go back, and I lay down on my bed, and I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to call him that way, right? And so I go into a very deep state, and I feel myself there, and I see Sam Jess, and she's like, they create these big screens just by motioning their hands, right, like that in a certain way, and looks like she's doing all this calculation on it. And as I'm watching her do this, it's like the way you sense something is to experience that body, that person, who they are, and the love that you have for them. And see, that's the key, the love, right? The access to infinity in a sense. And I'm feeling the love that I have for her and everything, and her beauty and everything as she's doing this. And I see this, like, from a view from over here, I see her crack a little smile. It's like, you're listening to me. And she smiles, and she starts laughing, and she comes over and grabs my arm, and it's like, crap, I'm here. I'm in the physical. And I said, what's going on here? Because it felt so strange. And she was explaining to me what I call homerization here, multiplicity. I was not just there. I didn't transport or anything. I became myself there. So my body that's back home in my bed is still there. And I'm physically here with Sam Jess on the ship. And that's not the limit, that you can split more times than that. And what it is basically on your plane of existence, like we talked about before, and the dimension that we're existing on, the one that we're aware of in this body, or this being, right, that we call ourselves, you can split it, and several times. I don't know how many, but it's not a lot, but to me it's a lot, when you talk about 7, 8, 9 times. But you can be in more places than one and be completely aware in each of those different places. And so anyways, that was what I learned about the multiplicity. And then I wanted to talk just slightly about the stepping back part. It was getting to a point where my head was so overwhelmed about all the things in this period of time that I learned, because I was spending a lot of time up there, but I also come back here because I got this charity to operate, and I got my life here, and the several different things that I do here. And so it was like I'm connected here, and I don't know if a lot of people can understand that. I can't really explain it, except for that I obviously came here for a purpose, right? And so anyways, I'm trying to fulfill that. We're almost up to 3,600 or almost 3,700 kids now, that we've rescued, that were destined to die. Yeah, that's this. And I call it the Quest, ECSS. That's our legal name. And then you can also access it, something easier to remember, endingchildsexslavery.org. But anyway, where were we going? Yeah, I started to step back. I wanted to, it's like all this stuff that I've become since I've been with them, the love, and like when you go on the ship, every single time I gotta hug them, right? And I act like I complain, but when you go into it, it's something really special that you feel with that other person. And it can take a while sometimes, but it's basically the way they explain, we're catching up on the love that we've missed since the last time we were together. And so anyway, when I keep losing my place here, stepping back, I needed, I was kind of getting scrambled in my head. It's like I need a vacation in a sense, right? So it wasn't like leaving them. I just needed to step back a little ways, and I need to go back to Earth and embed myself again, fully in being here in Earth as an Earth human, and see how I've changed, because you can't really gauge it unless you're experiencing it again. And so that's what I did, and it was a total disaster. That I have learned so much about these beings. They're like what I would read as an angel in the Bible, right? If I didn't know anything different, they are incredible beings, and all the people that I've met along the way, the other types of beings and personalities and stuff, and they have this intense amount of love, or what we would define as love. And like I say, it's ever expanding. It never ends. It's just incredible ways of experiencing these different things, and their emotions and their feelings, which is their way of communication primarily, right? And which you can do with any being if you understand those beings. And so when I came back, I was in this like emotional spin tornado, and it was like a wrecking ball coming loose, right? And just going crazy. I was bashing into everything, because it isn't received. And like I had said from the beginning, which is still true today, we have to have a different face here. It seems like for every person that we meet, in order to have have communication, because everybody's offense has offense for this or that, or this thing or the other, or they have these just opinions which don't mean anything. It's just part of our experience that we're having here. But people don't see it that way. They limit themselves to the brain rather than the mind. And so it was kind of a disaster as I landed, in a sense, right? Because people didn't know how to take me. You know, when you love somebody and you just freely give that, you know, they all of a sudden create opinions and judgment, and they go crazy on it. And then suddenly, you know, it's like they don't believe what they're seeing. They don't believe the experience that they're having in an exchange of that frequencies, the frequencies that you're emitting. You know, when you are energized and through love, that energy just, you know, grows and grows and grows, and you know, people become aware of you, which isn't always good in what the things that I do, but it's not the energy, but it's the frequencies that emanate out of that now with all this power coming from that energy. And so anyways, it was pretty bad. I couldn't fit. I didn't have a landing spot, right, in a sense. And so it got really confusing and stuff. And so I had to wean myself off of it. I had to step back in order to be able to step back again, to get everything flowing correctly again, because people here on earth are just not consciously aware, and they're not capable of that because it's unfamiliar to them. You know, if they start to allow those pieces of unconditional love to enter into them and stay with them, then their frequency starts to absorb that and understand it, kind of like contact, right? It's a conscious thing. It's consciousness that will connect us. You know, it's like I always say, you know, the UFO is not going to land in the yard and beings come out and shake your hands, because the lack of communication, the abilities, so many other things, the environmental factors, everything else. The way it's going to really take place is that we can connect with anybody, no matter what vast the distance is between us and them, and the communication will be the single language, which would be frequency, you know, and which is a whole nother story about what I'm trying to create here in a place of destination, where the hieroglyphs will be of sound rather than, you know, something that you see painted. Yeah, you'll still see them painted, you know, on the side of a wall or whatever, but it will be the sounds that emanate from that, which is the language that is spoken, right? And so anyway, I think I'm catching up here, maybe. Yeah, that was my stepping back. So anyways, but I have also delegated, like in the quest and stuff, because I didn't have to be completely full, you know. I'm one of those people, nobody can do it right but me, right? And nobody can do it as good as I can, you know, that sort of thing, which is bull. But so I've been able to set that in a schedule, sort of giving other people more power in order to take care of some of the things, so that I can, you know, be more useful in other ways during like a rescue, or when we need to talk about something or make decisions. And then the same with, you know, my personal life, and where I can, you know, breathe through it in a sense. And then like I work it down at the Glades, and that's one thing we didn't talk about then. Don't have enough time to talk about here, but you know, I met this panther down in the jungle, and he's kind of like my spirit animal. But he's actually real, which is fun. I put pictures on my Facebook when I caught him behind me. Took a picture, a selfie. Anyway, so I've kind of stepped back from that too, not putting myself fully in it. And so anyway, because the books are everything that comes from the books. All the profits go straight into the quest, you know, for the rescue of these children that are destined to die. And the work that I do down there, I never get it. It just goes straight to the quest. It's the only way I've found to fund it. You know, it's not like we get like big donations, or I'm not a marketer, and I'm terrible at asking for money and that sort of thing. So with these things, there have been very useful tools in order to help support it and accomplish the things that we need to do. So anyways, I've kind of reorganized who I am, what I do, and how I do it. And because of the things that they've taken me to, the love and how I am, how I be, that I've really became more. I'm not walking through walls yet or anything, but I don't have a desire to. But I like the physical. I like being, seeing the things that I do and living and being who I am. So I'm just kind of balancing it. And along that way, what's happened is that I'll kind of skip through this part a little bit. It'll be in my books, of course, in detail, and maybe we'll talk about it another time. But to get to the real point of it is they basically built a ship for me to go experience in my own way different things in space. And I talk about that in the later books, 13, 14, and 15. And basically the ship is an extension of myself in a way, and so it takes me to certain places and I experience certain things, and it's like, it was in my head, but I wasn't thinking it, right? I wasn't thinking directly on the surface of, oh, hey, I want to go here, or I want to experience this. It would read inside of me what I truly want, because we think we know what we want all the time, but not always do we, right? What we truly want comes out, and the ship could read that, and it was taking me places until I got to a certain point, and it was like, I really had this desire to go see the Vulcans. And if you've read about them, really cool people. And so they take me, the ship takes me to their planet. And so I go down there unexpected and everything, and I didn't announce myself or anything, but I knew where to go, because the ship took me right to where I had to be, right? But I go to the house, and I enter in, and it's like, I'm calling for him and everything. It's like, I don't want to be shot as a burglar. Of course, that's not going to happen, right? But anyway, they come to me, and they're excited that I'm there. And they're asking me, I'm telling them what's going on, and that I just wanted to come and see them. And so they were totally welcome and started to feed me and stuff. And they started talking, and they said, there's somebody you have to meet. And I said, yeah, cool. I'm always up for that. And they said, she's told them, this lady that they want me to meet, she said that she's my biggest fan, right? Because she reads the books. The people out there are people out there that actually read my books. And I guess the perspective, right? So anyway, they said, can they have her come over? And I said, sure, whatever. And so when she got there, her name's Jalen, or Jalen. I if I say it that way, it's hard to understand and hard for me to grasp, but so I call her Jalen. And so she comes over, and she's a lot like them with the narrow chin, but the rest of her looks normal to us, other than her eyes are larger, kind of like the Plejarens, just like the Vulcans and stuff. And she's got small, like elf-like ears, right? They have a small tip on them. And again, it's one of those things, the hair covers it, right? And you would never notice. But so anyways, and she's short too, just about like Sam Jess. And her age is real similar in Vulcan terms to Sam Jess, which to me, it's like she's 25 or so years old. And of course she's beautiful and all that. And the eyes, the eyes are always something, it's almost like it's a being itself. Like the Plejarens and the Vulcans and stuff, their eyes are like alive in a sense. And anyway, so she's talking to me and everything, and we're getting along really well. And so eventually she asked me, hey, do you want to see something with me? And I said, yeah. She goes, the sunset. And I had never really witnessed sunset there. I mean, I've been there during sunset, but I've never experienced sunset, right? Like we do. We take time out to see it, right? And so we got on she takes me off on this like the motorcycle, just like on the Plejaren planet, no wheels or anything. But I think she had some mental problem because like she didn't know there was in between fast and slow. So it was immediate fast, and I'm like holding on for dear life, and we finally get to the beach, and there we get on a I don't know, it was another contraption that would just float just above the water, and another type like motorcycle type thing. Actually, it was the one that we were on, but she had to convert it, and it only took a few seconds. And then we go out to this like I don't know what they call them, like a dock or something out that, you know how like in a big lake or something you'll have those 55-gallon drums underneath and a wood deck on it. It was like one of those things that was further out into the ocean. And so we get there, and she pulls up these chairs and puts them out, and it's like beach chairs, and it's like a tropical theme going on here. You know, I'm looking for a palm tree, but there wasn't any, of course. And so we sat there and we start talking as we're waiting on the sun to come down, and she starts to explain to me that there's a lot of similarities into what could come for like people of Earth. And it was like she's from a different Vulcan planet. When the Vulcans were growing and moving out into the space, they inhabited different planets and stuff too, and they could create their own style right on that planet. And like the one that particular that she was in or on, they were working with the environment with their technology and stuff, and for hundreds of years they had issues with deciding what direction to take as far as the technology and back and forth, right? And so it was kind of a messed up thing. There was no one mind for a long time, and then finally several hundred years ago they found a leader who put them in the direction that they're following now, which is connecting with the Vulcan planet to learn the technology, and then they can choose what it is that they use and apply on their planet for their lifestyle. And so basically it's like Earth, right? We're still barbarians and stuff, and they weren't necessarily barbarians, but you get the idea, the distance between that and advancement. And so like the Vulcan planet, like she explained, couldn't just give them the technology. It would be like the same thing as I've explained earlier about if aliens come into our space in a physical way and they give us, you know, tools to fix everything, you know, then we would destroy it, and we would destroy ourselves. It's kind of like when one person asked me or told me one time, why don't they come here and solve world hunger, right? Something that simple that they could do just in a snap of a finger. And like I explained, well, we could already do that. Why don't we, right? That's the point. We haven't reached that level of consciousness to be open to something that drastic. So even though this Vulcan planet, the second one, wasn't as advanced, they still were advanced, right? And so what they did was a lot of the younger people, which would be like part of Jalian's group, was like exchange students in a sense, right? And she travels to Vulcan 1, and like her surrogate parents are like the Vulcans, you know, my friends, the two. I call him Spock now. I had to give him a name, right? And it was so appropriate. And Laura, and not Laura, but Lara is the female's name. And so they took her in, and so they housed her in a sense while she learns different technologies that she can bring back with her to her planet. And so it's piece by piece, right? Bringing them up to speed in a sense over years. And it's already been several hundred years that they've been taking the technology, and they're still advancing, but they're not near as advanced as what the Vulcan 1 planet is yet. And so she was seeing the similarities, and I was understanding her, because that's where we're about to become if we're lucky, right? If we can figure out how to get our consciousness together, our conscious act together to a point where we're open to contact in that sense. I mean, there's a lot of other contact we can talk about in another video, but when we can reach that point of contact with each other, then we'll be on the similar path as what they are, if we make it that far, right? So anyway, so we had all these commonalities, and long story short again, we're back on the ship with Jillian and everything, and like Sam Jess tells me, that they had considered maybe um, her to be my escort now for a while. And not that I'm leaving the family or nothing, and not that I'm not going to be going back there or anything, because I still do. And but Jillian has taken me on her own, and I can relate with her a lot better than with the Plejarens. I mean, it's easy with the Plejarens, but they have to bring themselves so far down in order to help me through, right? Take me by the hand. Where Jillian, it's easier because she understands that, and that I'm not evolved yet, and such, but that I'm open, and that I've proven myself consciously, like with the Plejarens. And so she has taken me on several I don't know what you call it, missions, showing me different things in a different way, like plants, how they communicate to each other, and this being that showed us, how she was helping plants to communicate better again, because in a lot of places they don't have a good common language, basically, with the plants talking to each other and such. And then I actually got to see a forest that was in communication with itself, and kind of annoying too, right? I mean, when you read it, you'll understand. But then we did some other stuff and had these other experiences that I couldn't have had with as fully as with the Plejarens. So, and then there came a time recently that I wasn't so happy that we had to go back there with the Plejarens because of one of our friends or a couple of our friends that passed away. But that's a whole nother experience, which will also be in, I think, book 15 or so. But anyway, so I hope I've updated y'all enough till I do another video, which I will. I'm going to try to do them more often now that I've stepped back a little bit, but still, it's still a lot for me, okay? So give me a break. But anyways, give me questions. I got the Proton email, and also, you can put in messages in here, because I read them all. Not that I'm going to get to them right away, but I do read them, and I really appreciate them. So anyway, I guess that's it for now. Enjoy. Live long and prosper. Bye.